What is up, fellow techs? This is the Airsoft Tech here, and today we're going to be checking out a piston by SEMA. So when it comes down to pistons, you have a couple choices when it comes to the rack, that is. Now by rack, I mean where the teeth are on the piston, not the body. So like I said, you have about three choices. You have a full steel rack, you have a rack that's almost all plastic except the release tooth, and then you have one that's about half metal and half plastic. The SEMA piston is a full steel rack. That being said, this SEMA piston shares a lot of similarities with the SHS 15-tooth steel rack piston. Both the racks are of similar steel design. If you put them right next to each other and didn't tell me which one was which, I would probably not be able to tell you which one was which. They also bear very similar pickup tooth supports on the back of the piston, which is kind of a meh thing. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more pickup tooth support back there, but the body on this SEMA piston feels a lot tougher, so we're going to see how that works out in the long run. And to wrap it all up, both these pistons have a very sleek and slender design, unlike Lonex and other pistons like that, which are bulkier. All this taken into consideration, is this SEMA piston really any better than the SHS piston? We are going to actually find that out by installing this piston, this whole assembly, into a 9-tooth MS210 DSG setup. Let's go do that. So today we're going to be putting this SEMA piston to the test in my MS210 DSG setup. 18:1 gears by KWA, 9-tooth Siege Tech DSG, standard trigger setup, 16 gauge wiring, no MOSFET, I will explain in a second. Basic cylinder setup, full cylinder, not bore up or anything. ASG 28 TPA, Prometheus MS210 spring, bearing spring guide, metal cylinder head, etc. And I do have an STS in this thing, so it shouldn't break, but we will see if this gearbox shell completely destroys itself. So, let's install this piston. Like I said before, I am not running a MOSFET in this build. I'm testing out a different issue. I want to see something like how long these trigger contacts last on a efficient DSG setup. 18:1 gears, a 28 TPA is rather efficient. 16 gauge wiring, my motor tabs are soldering and not pins or connectors, so it's directly attached to the motor tabs, and of course I'm running Dean's connectors. So the SEMA piston is in three parts. Well, piston assembly, that is. It comes with the piston body, the piston head, and the lug nut in the back of the piston that secures, or the front of the piston, that secures the piston head to the piston body. We'll start off with the piston head. Piston head has 6 ports in it, and it's made out of this really tough plastic material. It almost feels like that POM type material. It feels really strong, and plastic piston heads are just fine. You don't need a metal piston head. These things don't normally break unless you have garbage ones that are made by Garter, and they're super brittle plastic, like almost candy cane feeling like material. It does come with an O-ring, and the O-ring does have some seaming around it, but to be fair, like almost all O-rings have that issue. I've never really encountered an O-ring that didn't have a sealing, like a seal ring around it, but it's not really an issue to begin with. This piston head is really good to go. Moving on to the lug nut in the back. So this lug nut is pretty heavy. It's made out of zinc, probably like a pot metal. Zinc is usually the most common metal used for pot metal and airsoft, and just pot metal in general. Well, pot metal is usually an alloy made out of like zinc and other disregarded weak aluminums and stuff like that. And so it's cheap, it's easy to work with, and it's relatively tough. Most of your gearbox shells, like your stock gearbox shells, are made out of zinc or pot metal alloy or zinc alloy, something along those lines. And this is no different here. It's just a big lug nut. It basically will add space and weight to your piston, which increases your joule creep effect, and which will increase your FPS therefore. Well, not always, but yes, it will increase your FPS and has potential to do so. I don't really run into issues running these things. Occasionally when I'm making a high speed build and I want to run like a JG piston and piston head or a SEMA piston head, I usually take this outside to my sander, it's in my garage, my sand belt, and I'll just grind it flat. And or relatively flat to where it's only like this much left on it. So I lose a lot of weight there. And that's what I was going for in those kind of builds. But you can run this thing, just full lug nut as it is, just fine. Alright, so piston body and rack. Like I said, this thing is very similar to SHS. It has more of a polygonal design than SHS pistons do. Theirs are round, while this SEMA one, has flat lines, making this kind of like, old video game style circle. I forgot what the term would be for that, but it's polygonal. And so that's kind of like different design. I mean, you see them in stock SEMA pistons, but I think this is like the only upgrade piston that does this. Well, no, that'd be a lie. Pretty sure Modify does it as well. But it's kind of different design. Not like it's gonna really improve anything. This piston can be Swiss cheese, obviously, just like any piston, so there's no question there. It has a little speed racks here for grease distribution, even though that really doesn't do much. The rack, it was on there relatively weak, so definitely glue it down. This thing is not pre-glued from the factory like SHS pistons are. So definitely glue this thing down. If it breaks and you don't glue it down, your fault. So yeah, this rack is very similar to SHS. It's just not a whole lot different with it. It's probably even the same rack, I don't know. But it is a good rack. So just make sure you glue it down for sure. So one thing I wanted to test out with this piston was how compatible it was with other gearbox shells. So I got 3 gearbox shells here: retro arms, Lonex, and VFC. Got the retro arms here. Fits 100% perfectly. Little wheel room, but that's nothing bad as long as it can stay in its tracks, which it seems to do just fine. Lonex right here. Fits 100% fine. It's kind of funny right there, it wants to catch sometimes. But with a cylinder in there keeping it straight, much more straight, it shouldn't do that. So here we have VFC. Now, a little bit of disclaimer, sometimes VFC has a big trouble with pistons and, shimming there. And oftentimes when I work on a VFC, I have to modify the SHS piston that I most often use in these builds. So this is a modified SHS piston to fit this VFC kind of gearbox, and it now slides just fine. I mean, it catches a little bit right there, but other than that, it slides fine. Now, unmodified SEMA piston, thrown right into the mix and see what happens. 100% perfectly fine, like no issues at all. Doesn't catch towards the back. Let's do something here. Falls straight forward on its own. Choose the test I do about right there just to see if it can do that. Since it can, we are good to go. Also, I hate warranties. So finally, we are going to install this bad boy into this mean gun. Remember, this is an MS210 spring. This is no joking spring. This is the most strong spring that they make for AEGs. So let's really put this piston to the test. Alright, so I've got the DSG put right back together. This is her in her full entirety. So it's the 9-tooth DSG, ASG 28 TPA motor, the SEMA piston that we are testing out in this video. And unfortunately not the MS210 spring. Now, bear with me. I simply couldn't get it in. I slayed at night. My hands are super sweaty because of it. They're just really stressed out. They're like the fingers are kind of fidgeting a little bit. My thumb really hurts with this one. And it's just, I couldn't get it in. I'm sorry, guys. The M190 is in though, so it's still a very stressful test. And so, ignoring the fact that I couldn't get the MS210 spring in, which eventually I will get in this gun because I really want to test that out. I'm going to, and I will make a video addition to this talking about the MS210 spring installed. But until then, we're going to go M190. So like I said, M190 spring in here. I got my 11.1 volt battery, pretty good size in there actually. And like I said, 28 TPA motor, 18:1 gears, DSG, 9-tooth. Let's hear it. That's semi. Full auto. Pretty good stress test right there on the piston. Not quite a full stress test. I'm putting this thing to the test. I'm going to see how much it takes to break this piston. Alright guys, so that's going to have to do for this video. So this SEMA piston's pretty great actually. I will update you guys if it breaks. I will update you guys when I install an MS210. Hopefully it doesn't break before the MS210, but I cannot make any promises. Alright, so you guys know the drill. Remember, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and tell me why below. If you didn't like it, give it a dislike and tell me why. I like to know these things. I want to know what you guys want. I want to know what I'm doing wrong. Also remember, go like my Facebook page. We've got about 700 and so likes now. I am active on there. I will reply to your message in a timely manner, at least I'll try to. Some of them kind of get washed under. Just keep messaging me. It'll get there eventually. And I will respond eventually. Hopefully within a week or so of getting the response. Also, go follow my Instagram page. I'm not too active on there, but I do post updates. And if and when this SEMA piston ever breaks, I will probably post it on there for everybody to see how terrible it broke. If it does break yet again. Also, remember, quite a new thing is I have my Patreon page. I would definitely recommend you to check that out at the very least. I know people are tight on money, especially guys my age. which is the majority of the demographic for my videos and my channel in general. But if you can just find it in the goodness of your heart to give a little something, you will get a lot of something as well. But until then, guys, stay tuned out there, techs. I will see you in the next video.